To avoid any misunderstandings, Lim leaned forward. His voice was full of arrogance. "We wanted you to know in advance that everything will go to us," he said. My brother's words hit me like a punch in the gut, and suddenly the homemade lasagna on my plate, the very dish Mom had lured me home with, felt like lead in my stomach. For a moment, silence reigned in the dining room, broken only by the distant hum of a lawnmower in the suburban quiet of Vega. "What do you mean by everything?" Sarah intervened sharply. Mom, visibly upset, stammered, "What Lim said. The cottage by the lake will go to Liam and Lun." "You, Sarah." I turned to Dad, hoping to see even the slightest hint of a joke or misunderstanding, but he avoided my gaze, staring at the cutlery in front of him. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever until he finally spoke. "Sarah," Dad said, slowly folding his hands, "you've done well in life. Your mother and I are proud of your career and the successes you've achieved. Liam and Leon are still finding themselves. They need more support." I blinked back the stinging tears, trying to hold them in. Support. For years, I silently shouldered the family's financial burdens, thinking it was my duty as the eldest daughter. I paid for their home, endless tuition fees, all without complaint. Apparently, it meant nothing. My heart ached with bitter resentment as I looked at my parents, their faces hardened by betrayal, sharper than I could have imagined. "So, this is my reward for paying off your mortgage for the past 4 years, for the $30,000 I invested in the cottage renovations last summer. You're leaving me with nothing because I've achieved something." Mom sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "That's why we didn't want to tell you. You always reduce everything to money, Sarah. Family has never been your priority." Heat rushed to my cheeks, and my fists clenched under the tablecloth. "Family has always been my priority," I retorted. "Every sacrifice I made was for the family because family sticks together." Lim snorted, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms with a smug grin. "You're playing the martyr. No one forced you to help. You just like it playing the heroine." Lien chuckled softly, twirling a strand of her shiny hair around her finger. Her eyes narrowed with mockery. "Maybe you thought that if you showered us with money, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us." My parents remained silent, their silence speaking louder than any justification they could have offered. They had always indulged Liam and Leon, shielding them, forgiving every irresponsible step. And here I was after years of sacrifice, being portrayed as greedy and selfish. Anger surged within me. No one forced me, but from today onward, no one will make me feel guilty for not being the family's aunt anymore. I'm leaving. I pushed my chair back abruptly and stood up, ignoring the surprised faces around me. For a moment, the scent of marinara and roasted garlic hung in the air, a cruel reminder of the warm family evening I had foolishly hoped for. Instead, I found myself trapped in a humiliating ambush. I grabbed my coat from the hallway and slammed the front door behind me, the sound echoing through the house as I walked away from the voices that no longer meant anything to me. The cool Portland air hit my face, clearing my mind. They had used me, discarded me, and made me feel worthless. I got into my car and slammed the door, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands as tears finally began to flow during the quiet, lonely drive back to my downtown apartment. Memories flooded back, every financial sacrifice, every canceled vacation, every night spent poring over spreadsheets and paying bills to ensure their comfort. All of it done silently, without complaint, out of a misguided sense of love and duty. How naive I had been, believing that my efforts were valued, that they were respected at home. My apartment felt strangely foreign, as if everything around me was permeated with this revelation. I poured myself a large glass of Cabernet, the expensive one I had been saving for a special occasion. For some reason, the bitter lesson of that night seemed like a fitting reason to open it. Settling on the couch, I opened my banking app. The monthly payments of $1,800 labeled parents' mortgage and another $600 for utility bills glowed on the screen. Without hesitation, I cancelled them both, a quiet sense of rebellion stirring in my chest as the confirmations flashed across the screen. The dinner conversation echoed in my mind. Anger gave way to deep sadness. The rejection was not just financial, it was emotional. All my life, I had felt second-rate, and now it was confirmed openly. But even in this pain, something new was born within me, a sense of freedom. The realization that my worth did not depend on their recognition had come. It was time to reclaim my life, shed the expectations and obligations that had become chains around my neck. There would be calls, arguments, maybe even retaliation, but that night was a turning point. No matter how they pressured me, I silently vowed to myself that I would no longer be a victim. I would no longer accept disrespect disguised as duty. From that moment on, my life was mine. Draining the last sip of wine, I smiled bitterly into the darkness. My family had invited me home to announce that everything would go to Liam and Loon. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling of my apartment, my mind endlessly replaying the disbelief, pain, and anger. The city lights softly glowed through the curtains, indifferent to my turmoil. Every time I closed my eyes, I relived those humiliating minutes at the table, the smugness on Liam's face, the contempt in Loon's eyes, and worst of all, the stony silence of my parents. Their silence cut deeper than any words my siblings could have hurled at me. By morning, exhaustion had wrung all the tears from me. I dragged myself out of bed and made a strong coffee, sitting numbly at the kitchen table. The morning news murmured softly in the background, but I wasn't listening. Memories assailed me from all sides, relentless in their clarity. Had I been blind all these years, or had I deliberately ignored the signs, desperately believing that my family valued me for more than just the money I provided? Suddenly, my phone buzzed loudly on the wooden table. It was Mum. My stomach churned, and I let the call go to voicemail, not ready or able to hear her voice so soon. A minute later, a notification for a new message appeared. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Sarah, please stop being so dramatic," Mom's voice said in her usual mix of irritation and guilt. "Call me back. You know family doesn't treat each other this way." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Family only mattered when it suited their manipulations. I set the phone down, deciding not to fall for their well-honed tactics. Over the following days, the calls intensified, first from Mom, then Dad, followed by Liam and Leon, alternating between condescending lectures and sarcastic pleas. But beneath their voices was a hint of panic. Their financial lifeline had vanished, especially after a particularly venomous call from Leon, accusing me of selfishness and envy. I blocked them all, a sense of peace washing over me for the first time in years. Fragile and unfamiliar, but beneath that relief a dull, constant ache lingered. I didn't know if it would ever truly go away. I threw myself into work, seeking solace in it. The latest project for Bennett Construction, a modern medical complex in Sacramento, demanded my full attention. Meetings, blueprints, and client walkthroughs, all the things I had always done with ease, now became a desperate escape from reality lurking beyond the office walls. I stayed late at work, volunteered for extra business trips, anything to delay facing the emptiness of my new quiet evenings. 3 weeks passed without direct contact with my family, and I began to hope timidly that they had accepted my decision and moved on. But deep down I knew the truth. On a Friday afternoon, a message flashed ominously on my screen: "Family meeting tonight, Sarah. You must be there." My pulse quickened as disbelief battled with outrage. I owed them nothing now, but curiosity mixed with a perhaps foolish hope for reconciliation won out. Before I could change my mind, I typed a single word: "Okay." Driving to my parents' house that evening, I felt a surreal sense of detachment. Liam's motorcycle, with its showy brightness, and Leon's loud blue Kia were already parked outside like matching symbols of their arrogance. Anxiety twisted in my stomach as I approached the familiar front door, now feeling foreign and unwelcoming, like an enemy fortress. Mom opened the door, her forced smile barely concealing her irritation. "So glad you could make it," she said drily, ushering me into the house that no longer felt like mine. Aunt Daisy was also there, sitting quietly in the corner of the living room. Her eyes shone with sympathy but also worriness, not wanting to get involved in the family drama. I sat across from her, my heart pounding as my siblings entered the room, openly glaring at me. Dad cleared his throat. "We called this meeting to set things straight, Sarah," he began sternly. "Your mother and I thought you would have come to your senses by now. Clearly we were wrong." I held back a sharp retort, clenching my fists under the table. "You completely cut me out after everything I did for you," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to control it. "Every mortgage payment, every check for tuition, and you want me to come to my senses. Enough is enough. Stop being so dramatic," Mom snapped, rolling her eyes. "You helped out, of course, as the eldest. But you chose work over family." I laughed bitterly. "I chose work over family. I built a career because you needed my money. I gave up vacations, friendships, relationships, all so you could live in this illusion of stability. Spare us your dramas," Liam sneered. "We never asked for your pity." "Exactly," Leon chimed in with a contemptuous smirk. "Maybe if you weren't so busy playing the family savior, you'd have your own life." Heat flooded my face, and humiliation pulsed painfully. Aunt Daisy shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Maybe you're right," I admitted. "It was my mistake to believe I meant something more here. I won't make that mistake again." Dad's voice cut sharply from behind me. "If you walk out that door, Sarah, don't expect to be welcomed back." I froze my hand on the doorknob. The anger that had been building up my entire life surged forth. "That's fine," I said coldly, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "I've finally realized that my family never truly valued me. I was just a convenient replacement, unwanted at home." I stepped out, slamming the door behind me, the sound echoing through the hallway. The cool evening air hit my face, clearing my mind. My family had used me, discarded me, and made me feel worthless. But in that moment, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I got into my car and drove away, leaving behind the voices that no longer meant anything to me. Back in my apartment, I sat in the darkness, the silence now strangely comforting, enveloping me like a shield. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled on the couch, opening my banking app. The monthly payments glowed on the screen, mocking me with their accusatory presence. With a trembling finger, I canceled them, a sense of rebellion and freedom washing over me. I had always been the responsible one, the reliable one, but now I was done. I was done being their scapegoat. Done being their financial crutch. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of my family's betrayal pressed down on me, but there was also a glimmer of hope. I had made a choice to value myself, to put myself first. And in that choice, I found a strength I never knew I had. The days turned into weeks, and the initial shock of my decision began to wear off. My parents, Liam and Leon, tried to contact me, their messages ranging from pleading to accusatory, but I stood firm. I had made my choice, and I was not going to back down. Work became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the familiar routines and demands. I threw myself into my projects, determined to prove that I could succeed on my own, without the constant drain of my family's needs. And slowly I began to heal. I started to see myself not as a victim, but as a survivor, someone who had the strength to walk away from a toxic situation and build a new life. It wasn't easy. There were days when the loneliness was overwhelming, when I doubted myself and my decisions. But I pushed through, reminding myself of why I had made this choice. I deserved to be happy, to live my life on my own terms, without the constant burden of my family's expectations. And so I forged ahead, one step at a time, building a new life for myself, a life where I was the priority, where my needs and desires came first. And in that journey, I found a strength and resilience I never knew I had.